on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS value plays for this week's Fortinet Championship. Going to be covering my top 6 GPP players priced $7,500 and below that I'll be getting to in plenty of my Draftkings lineups to not only open up some salary flexibility up top, but also to get some much needed ownership leverage. It's by far the most important video I put out every single week, so you'll definitely want to make sure to strap on in here. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get this thing started. All right, my Patreon projections are on the screen, and as per usual, if you want access to all of my projections, not just the 6 players we'll talk about here, you know where to find them. A link is down below. But the first player I want to touch on is going to be Adam Long at $7,500. He's coming in with pretty decent form. So if we take a look at his last 50 rounds, which if you caught my core picks video, is the sample size that I think is the most adequate for this sort of field, especially off a 2 to 3 week break, you'll see that Adam Long is gaining pretty much across the board. Now, the slightest of losers there around the green, which if we're going to have any stat really pop out there, around the green is the one that I'm okay with kind of being sorry. Whereas off the tee, he's extremely accurate. Now, he's not very long off the tee, so the fact that he's even gaining in that category might be a little bit surprising, but he's been pinpoint accurate off the tee. Approach play has been a plus for him for quite some time, and the usual for Long is gaining with the flat stick. He is one of the more consistent putters that you find out here on tour, and on the Ben Poa surface is one of the best putters, period, in the entire field. If you remember, Taylor Pendrith was gaining 0.89 shots gained per round on the Ben Poa surface. Well, Adam Long, 0.84, right up there with Taylor Pendrith. Not coming in with nearly the ball striking form of a Pendrith, but in his own right in the $7,500 range. Really makes sense for this sort of golf course. From the course fit perspective, it's a shorter golf course, under 7,200 yards for a par 72. So you love to see that for somebody like Adam Long. And on top of that, you also have somebody that's maybe not the strongest off the tee, right? With the lack of distance out there, he can do what he does well, which is hit those wedges, go out there, make a bunch of putts on the Ben Poa surface. Should be able to leverage his skill set rather than worry about the things that normally hold him back. So I like the course fit there. I do expect him to be at least middling owned, right? 6.2% right over here isn't non-existent. He's definitely on the middle to higher end of the spectrum in this range when it comes to ownership. But at 6.2%, take him in 12 to 15% of your lineups, and you can feel pretty good about your leverage. Moving down a little bit further, we're going to have Steven Yeager at $7,400. Now, he's playing in the AM wave, and this is super early, right? This is on a Tuesday afternoon, so we don't even have the super forecast on Windfinder for Thursday yet. For Friday yet. We do have it for Thursday at this point, but it's looking like the morning on Thursday should be a lot calmer than the afternoon, about a 10-mile-an-hour differential between the two waves. And then if we look at just the normal forecast for Friday, it looks like it should be relatively low winds for the entire day. That tends to push me towards the AM PM wave, whereas in the Thursday, the morning wave is going to escape the worst conditions that the Thursday afternoon wave is going to have to deal with. And then on Friday, everyone's in relatively stagnant conditions. So the guys that are, like Yeager, we'll talk about Mark Hubbard here in a second, that are in that morning wave get a slight boost. Now, it's just slight, right? It's not a massive boost that we're going out there and playing. But when Yeager is already coming in with form like he is, we take a look at the last 50 rounds, he's right around neutral off the tee, which is actually pretty good for Yeager, much like a Adam Long, not so long like the name would imply there. On approach, though, has been fantastic, gaining over a third of a stroke per round. Around the green has also been an asset for Steven Yeager. And the putter, believe it or not, has been a slight negative, which is definitely surprising. He's one of the better short game players on tour, and on this Ben Poa surface has been fantastic. Gains 0.79 shots gained per round on that surface. Is another accurate player off the tee that doesn't leverage it all that much with their distance. So this week, just hit some fairways, lean into the wedge play, which also is another weapon that Yeager goes out there and leverages. I expect this to be a great spot to get to him and to ride that momentum he had at the end of the year. So if we take a look at it, you'll see that first off, Long, missed the cut there, withdrew. I think there'll be a few people that are a little bit hesitant to get to him because of that withdrawal, but getting down there to Steven Yeager, 13th place, 5th place at the Rocking Mortgage was a standout performance. The top 25 at the Barracuda was even a pretty solid outing for him. He's trending in the right direction, is getting to a golf course that makes sense, and I think that he's worth taking a few shots on. Next up, we've got Mark Hubbard. So starting in the AM wave, so much like Steven Yeager, should be, at least as of right now, it's early in the week, right, in the quote-unquote advantageous wave. And also, like the first two players we've gone to, you'll see a trend here, not the longest player off the tee, a little bit more accurate. And if we take a look at the last 50 rounds, you'll see at $7,300, he's not gaining off the tee, but gaining significantly on approach, right? That's a commonality between all three players, and then gaining with the putter. And then on this Ben Poa surface, is a significant gainer. In fact, gaining 0.67 shots gained per round on the hybrid. So I love what I'm seeing from that department. He's coming in with decent form. Even over the last 24 rounds, you'll see that he's posting some pretty solid numbers. You'll see gaining 0.75 shots gained per round at approach. You'd love to see that. Still right around neutral off the tee. And with the putter, is gaining a third of a stroke per round. So Mark Hubbard checking a lot of the boxes that I'm looking for. Number 5 in Silverado fit. Top 10 when it comes to the model ranking down here at number 41 in pricing. Just a lot to love about Mark Hubbard. All right, now we're going to change it up a little bit. Instead of some of these short little plotter accuracy first type of players, now we've got Chris Gotterup at $7,100. And this isn't a course fit type of thing. With Gotterup, he's just a better player than his price tag. $7,100, and to this point, has looked like an absolute killer on tour, gaining both significantly off the tee and on approach, where you can see over his last, I don't know, probably like 35 to 40 rounds. He doesn't have the full 50 round sample size. He's gaining close to half a stroke per round off the tee, over 2/3 of a stroke per round on approach. And the putting in around the green, though it hasn't been a positive, it also hasn't been absolutely dog shit, right? It's still been half decent. Losing close to 0.2 strokes per round in each category. But the thing to really look at this week is the putting on Ben Poa. He has 2 tournaments worth of sample size, so 8 rounds there, and he's gaining 0.44 shots per round on the surface. That is well above average. That is well above his baseline at this point, which again is closer to a negative 0.2 shot baseline. And if you can go out there, be a gainer in that category, rely on this ever so consistent ball striking, right? Gaining half a stroke per round off the tee, 2/3 on approach. That right there is the recipe to go out there top 5 or potentially even win this golf tournament. So I think he has legit win equity down here at the bottom end of the 7K range. And at this point, isn't coming in as chalk either. Have him at 7.4% right now, which is more than doable for this slate. And compared to a lot of the guys behind him, sure, he's the quote-unquote chalk player here, but he's also head and shoulders by far the better player. So I think it's chalk worth eating. And I'm going to take him in probably 20, maybe even 25% of my lineups to make sure that I can get some much needed leverage to the field. Next up, we've got Harris English at $7,000. Now, he hasn't looked all that good since returning from his injury. In fact, you can see he's ranked number 126, 121, towards the bottom of the field when it comes to his metrics. But long-term, Harris English is a top 5, top 10 player in this field. You've seen it. He's won multiple times over the last 2 to 3 years. I believe twice, might even have been 3 times over that span. But in either circumstance, a great putter. And on this Ben Poa surface, you can see he's gaining close to 3/4 of a stroke per round. A lot of that has been done at the Travelers, which is one of the few venues on the entire schedule that you have this Ben Poa mix. With the Rocket Mortgage, he's also putted well at those greens. And I believe that's it. I think it's just those 2 events where you see it other than here. And he's, played here over the years. Let's see. What is his course history looking like down here at $7,000? So for Harris English, he hasn't played here over the last 2 years, but back in the day finished 33rd, made the cut back in 2019. In 2018 did miss the cut. So he hasn't shown up to the Fortinet over the last 2 years. Maybe because he's returning from injury, the form hasn't been there over the last 2 to 3 months. He wants to take advantage of these weaker fields, try and get back into form. I honestly couldn't blame him for that, but if he can get back to even 80, 90% of what he was before, he's going to smash at a $7,000 price tag, right? Great putter. When he's on his best game is both long and accurate off the tee. The wedge play is something that if you look at a long-term sample size, he's top 5 in the field in pretty much all the wedge categories. A lot of reasons to love Harris English this week. So I'll definitely be there. The shots gained are not pretty. I kind of wanted to avoid looking at this because it's horrendous, right? Losing 3/4 of a stroke per round off the tee. If there's one golf course you can get away with not being good off the tee, it would be Silverado Resort and Spa. On approach, he's been a loser over that period. At least the short game has been there. I'm sure that's the one part of his game that he's been able to practice even with the injury. The ball striking is going to take some time. And perhaps the 2, 3, 4 week stretch that he was able to take off there was able to be useful for him to go out there and recuperate. And I'm going to be in on him, right? I'm going to be early on Harris English because I have him 2.3% owned right now. He's a solid $2,000 too cheap. It's just an opportunity that I can't pass up. And now lastly, the last value pick I want to touch on here is definitely a little bit out of right field, but it could also pay off massively, is my version of Cam Young from last year. So in the video for the Fortinet last year, 2 of the value picks really stand out to me that I chose. Actually, 3 of them, okay? Taylor Moore was one was Davis Riley, and one was Cam Young. And there's a video on YouTube of this last year. I was on all 3 at this event based on their Korn Ferry Tour stats, their average finish rate, all of that sort of fun stuff that I use in my modeling. And this year, there's a couple guys that fit that same mold. One of them is Dafu, but all 3 of those players last year missed the cut at the Fortinet. It was a meme, right? I was like, wow, I guess they suck. I guess I was way too early on them. And then, within the next few weeks, all of them went out there and started smashing. And Sahith Theegala was another one I played at this event. I can't remember his finish here. I don't think it was nearly as bad as some of the others. Oh, no, yeah, he made the cut. We looked at that when we were looking at the course history before. Just to give you guys an idea, yeah, he finished in 14th in 2021, 47th last year. The other guys all missed the cut. Dafu is in that same sort of mold where he's gaining a bunch on Ben Poa. I loved that. I was looking at the same sort of stats in Cam Young last year. He was good on Ben Poa from his Korn Ferry Tour stuff. And Dafu, if you remember, and you might not because it was only for a little bit during the Open Championship, he sniffed the lead of that event, and he had it for a little bit of time there. MJ Dafu was in the lead. He was going out there, balling out for quite some time. He's played on the Korn Ferry Tour of late. He's posted a few decent finishes. He has, I believe, 7 top 3 finishes on the Korn Ferry Tour this year. Before that, he was an absolute phenom coming out of South Africa. This kid is going to be a stud. Like, this is like your version of Cam Young, Davis Riley from that last year, that sort of thing. And there's a few others too, and most of them are on the Patreon. I'll remind you, if you're looking for access to everything that's blacked out, so all the projections and whatnot, there's a few other guys that are just popping like crazy in the modeling, and it's these Korn Ferry Tour studs that I'm just so excited to get to, and Dafu's definitely one of them. You've seen him in a major championship qualifying for it. I mean, that just shows you the type of quality of prospect that Dafu is, and he's 1% owned. So I'm sure me talking him up is probably going to make his ownership a little bit higher, but an absolute smash play at that sort of price tag. Guys, that is all I've got for the value picks. Before you hop it out of here, go ahead and smash that like button, and then go ahead and comment down below who your favorite value on the slate is, price $7,500 and below. We're going to have fades and sleepers dropping on later on tonight, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And also, tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll have our weekly DFS live stream. We'll be touching on the weather, to see whether that AM-PM stack is going to be something you want to target. We'll touch on strategy, ownership, all of your live questions down in chat. So make sure to stop on by for that. Set a reminder. There is a link down in the description of the video, so you can go ahead and do so. And also, make sure to join the Patreon if you haven't already. That way you can get access to all of my projections, ownership as they change throughout the week, my player pool, access to the community Discord, and now we're doing football too, so there's a combo tier there too. So if you're looking for access to all of my football projections, it's a great deal there. So definitely recommend checking that out. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already as well. That way you don't miss any of the content I post in the future. But until then, guys, best of luck with all of your lineups, and let's get this cash.